Bern, North Carolina, is a mirror image of the past. Tryon Palace, standing again as it did in 1770, once the residence of a royal governor, William Tryon, and seat of government for colonial North Carolina. A palace known as the most beautiful building in colonial America. Then it fell in decay and later burned, almost totally destroyed. Now renewed, it stands complete as in the days of its first splendor and welcomes thousands of visitors every year.
This house expresses the style and taste of the 18th century. In the entrance hall, 4 marble sculptures. Each represents one of the continents. America is pictured as an Indian maiden. Now, coming into the library, you will notice the portrait of a young man. This is said to be the earliest Gainsborough painting in the United States. Governor Library held several hundred books. He was a well-read man in searches. We know what books he had from household inventories. And almost all of the titles have been replaced in contemporary editions.
Tryon was a cultivated man, an Englishman among colonial Americans. He enjoyed his pleasures and his privileges in this fine house. He built it to impress the colony with the dignity of the crown he represented. We know Tryon was fond of chess and played with his secretary, Isaac Edwards, who doubtless hoped to skin his superior.
The painting that forms the upper half of this splendid mirror depicts a fanciful city of China. The sofa is Chippendale with its original needlework. There are many pieces in the palace that show the 18th century's newfound interest in the Orient. The alcove room, all a delicate pale blue, is a luxurious guest room. It also boasts the only closet to be found in the palace. Closets were very rare in colonial houses. The beauty of Baroque in gilt and brocade. The portraits depict royal ladies of the time, like Queen Charlotte with the small Prince of Wales. Everywhere, rare materials and workmanship, imported articles brought from all the world. This is the taste of privileged and wealthy people, far removed from the rough colonists of early Carolina.
How did the palace come to be here? In early years, the small colonial towns disputed bitterly which should be the capital. Tryon favored New Bern, well located on the Neuse and Trent rivers. He built the palace, costly and elaborate for its time, to clinch the argument and settle the capital firmly at New Bern.
china, inlaid woods, the grace of Chippendale. Again, the fanciful depicting of the East, ornate, delicate, and imaginary. In the dressing room of the lady of the house, a rare work of art. A gold silk screen from the authentic Orient, from 18th century Japan. It's thought to be a picture of the ancient city of Kyoto. Treasures that reflect the tastes and fancies of privileged gentlefolk. The governor, his family, and guests dined in this stately room facing the River Trent. The swamps and pines were close at hand, the little town with its troublesome settlers and rude frontier politics just outside the door. But here were the paintings, marbles, glass, and silver of a graceful, cultivated Europe.
And here, the council chamber. The primary office of state for colonial North Carolina, serving also as a ballroom of handsome proportions. The Hanoverian kings looked down remotely on the business of their colony. Often this business was turbulent and vexed. The western part of the colony was becoming restive, fractious, independent-minded. This was the eve of the American Revolution, the last moment when British rule would dictate laws and taxes. Governor Tryon took active interest in the colony's prosperity. But as an Englishman, his first and last loyalty was not to the colonists, but to the crown.
While the palace was a building of state, it was also a home, with the pleasures and distractions of a busy household. A place where friends could gather for the sociable drinking of tea. The institution of tea and coffee drinking was unshakable in the 18th century. To embellish the genteel ritual of tea drinking, many elegant articles for the home were specially designed. Tryon's lady and her daughter Margaret were frequently hostesses at palace tea parties. Margaret Tryon was only 9 years old when the family entered their fine home by the river. Her mother was a cultivated lady, fond of music, meeting and singing with the Moravian colony of Old Salem during a visit to the western back country. The child of 9 in a strange land, thinly settled, was surely much alone. Some ladies wrote about her. This poor thing is stuck up in a chair all day, nor dare she even to taste tea, fruit cake, or any little trifle offered her by company. Margaret, with her precious toys and books, must, like all children, have taken refuge in her own imaginings and fancies, her own little world of dreams. is the governor's bedroom, very dignified and handsome as befits the occupant. The 18th century French bedspread is truly notable for the artistry of its crewel work. Even after 200 years, the richness of design is undimmed. The colors have kept all their depth and brilliance.
The room displays the usual appointments of a man of fashion. They give the visitor a sense of the time long ago when the world of gentlemen was a strange mixture of refinement on one hand, with a good deal of rough living, danger, and adventure on the other. It brings the sense of adventure close to us. Not quite close enough for some. The father of Governor Tryon was a well-born English gentleman with an estate in Northamptonshire. The governor's own taste in houses was shaped, no doubt, by the fine houses of his family connections. Balance, formalism, the classic spirit set the tone for 18th century taste. Paintings at Tryon Palace mirror this sense of form and elegance. So indeed does the palace itself.
The east wing of the palace has the kitchen, laundry, secretary's office, and some guest rooms. The original flooring has been reproduced in the great colonial kitchen. The kitchen wing was often separate from the main house in colonial times. Cooking went on constantly. The palace kitchen shows us how ingenious appliances could be in the days before electricity. The stipjack, forerunner of the rotisserie, roasted meat very efficiently. Palace food was roasted, baked, or broiled, seldom fried. A gingerbread mold carved with the alphabet could teach a child his letters as he ate. Herbs from the garden used for cooking and for medicines. There were porous gourds to use as dish rags. The butcher's broom to brush the cooking boards never lost its stiffness or its leaves. Many intriguing labor-saving implements and vessels, from dove roasters to waffle irons. Long ago, when recipes were on a grander scale, ingredients were mostly measured by weight. Otherwise, why weigh eggs? Next door, a place of real hard toil, the laundry room. Laundry at the palace wasn't done often, but it took several days in the doing. The laundry tubs and vessels were on a heroic scale, like the size of the job itself. It took a host of maidservants to keep the household in order, washing, sewing, pressing, and pleating, to maintain the fine fabrics, laces, and ruffles of the gentlefolk. Endless hot coals, hot water, and footsore drudgery went to support the airs and graces of the time. The flowering trees of Carolina must have been wondrous to a child lately come from cool and misty England. Records of a garden are scant, but we can guess that the Tryon family, with their love of well-ordered estates and parklands, would have cleared and ordered the swampy shores along the River Trent. Nearby were pine forests, the scattered farms of colonists. Here was an island of protected beauty.
The Revolution came. North Carolina's capital shifted westward to Raleigh. The palace decayed. In 1798, the main building burned to the ground. Today, Mr. and Mrs. John Kellenberger have completed a remarkable work of restoration. The Palace Commission has rebuilt Tryon's palace according to original plans and records. Prime mover in this imaginative effort was Mrs. Maud Moore Latham, mother of Mrs. Kellenberger. Her gifts and bequests, with help from the state government, made possible the $3.5 million restoration, a work of vision, devotion, and joy, so that North Carolinians might know of their heritage.
Every object in Tryon Palace mirrors the daily round, the homely detail of 18th century life. A man's hat box, items for kitchen and pantry, leather buckets for fire prevention, a traveling pitcher to keep the beer within easy reach. Useful, necessary items. And on the walls, lively engravings to depict the fads and fancies and foibles of the time.
At the palace, British soldiers and officers attended the governor and his household. An officer brought with him to the colonies those gentlemanly arts befitting his place in society. Swordsmanship, horsemanship, cutting a fine figure. The British gentleman was often an outdoors man, fond of riding and hunting. For such a man, North Carolina offered sport in plenty, but not without hazard. In early times, the colony was full of peril, shipwreck, dark forests, wild beasts, and Indians. It all started with that massacre back in 17, struck right here at New Bern, slaughtered colonists by the score. Lord, man, those bloody Tuscaroras. Settlers were positively ripped to shreds, disemboweled, burned to cinders. Tragic indeed for Baron de Graffenried, who brought his Swiss and German colonists to found the settlement of New Bern, 1710. The Baron's colony, sanctioned by Queen Anne, suffered many deaths and hardships, but would become the first permanent capital of North Carolina. The kings and queens of England ruled the colony in Tryon's day. But revolution was in the air. After it came American governors, among them Richard Caswell, Abner Nash. Alexander Martin and Richard Dobbs Spate ruled from the palace another 20 years. Tryon's secretary, Isaac Edwards, became an ardent patriot.
The household furnishings mostly came from Europe, reflecting old world tastes and workmanship. But many objects were Native American in origin. Early American style, plainer, simpler, very functional. Children's toys, a trundle bed. Furnishings that reflect the feeling of the frontier, of pioneers who lived at the edge of a wilderness. John Hawkes of London designed the palace, much in the manner of an English estate. From John Hawkes' plans, the palace buildings are recreated once again. And gardens have been designed in 18th century English style. On the same site, same scale, same foundations, Governor Tryon's palace displays its beauties for all of us today.
The palace is a treasure house of 18th century art and design. In feeling, it resembled London houses, not unlike those of Grosvenor Square. In the 18th century, the taste and elegance of London, Vienna, Paris were reaching out across the world. The beauty of a great age restored at Tryon Palace in all its artistry and brilliance. Palace on the shores of the New World, a child's new world. Scene of a governor's struggle, a colony's rebellion, a place of gracious entertainment, a family's home. That home, destroyed, has risen again like the phoenix from its ashes, image of a time long past. Tryon's Palace, projection of the past into the present and for the future, to be enjoyed by all the people of the state and nation that have grown so great since Tryon's day. A house of treasures, mirror image of an age.